Charter Local Edition with your host, John MacDonald.
Hello, we are visiting today with Chris Kukulski, who is the city manager in Bozeman, and we are at the Montana League of Cities and Town meeting in your hometown, or at least in your adopted hometown, I guess.
Absolutely.
Welcome. I appreciate you taking some time today.
Well, thanks for giving me the opportunity. I appreciate it.
Absolutely. So tell us a little bit about your background and how you ended up where you're at with the city manager's position here.
So I've been in Bozeman a little over 11 years as city manager. Had the honor of serving previous to that in Kalispell from 99 to 04, and my wife and I landed in Montana on our honeymoon. And so 5 years later, after falling in love with Montana on our honeymoon, we ended up working out here, and we've been out here about 16 years now. So,
excellent, excellent.
Yeah.
Your adopted second home.
Yes, absolutely.
Yeah.
So I've had 3 daughters here, so I just say, you know, they were born here, they get to stay, and hopefully mom and dad can stay with them. So in the Flathead, I used to have to say that more than here in the Gallatin.
Yeah.
So.
Well, tell us a little bit about some of the stuff that's going on in Bozeman. I know you've got a lot of activities, a lot of growth. In particular, let's talk about the Justice Center that you're putting together.
Yeah, so we're working in collaboration with Gallatin County. Back in '94, the county and the city joined forces and moved into the old Catholic high school, and have been using that ever since for our Law and Justice Center. About in 1994 is when we started growing as a community, so it was kind of perfectly situated for a small town of 20,000 in a relatively small county. But now we've well outgrown that facility, and so we're working again in collaboration with them to design a new Law and Justice Center and have that in front of the voters in the fall of 2016. So.
And that seems to be something that a number of communities in Montana are facing. I know the same thing in Lewis and Clark County as well. And you mentioned that this is something that you have to take to the voters. Tell me about the strategy or what you foresee having to do in that respect.
Yeah, so you know, next summer it'll be designed and fully dialed in exactly what the dollar amount needed will be. So we'll have a bond issue on the ballot. We'll probably go out and do anywhere from 50 to 75 public meetings and discussions. The goal will be genuinely to meet with anybody, anywhere, anytime, to answer their questions, educate them on the subject. We can't advocate for bond issues, but we can educate folks on them so that they hopefully are making a well-informed decision when they head to the ballot in November of 16. So.
And in terms of the ask itself, the monetary amount that you're going to request, where does that stack up and compared to other projects that Bozeman has gone to the voters to support?
Well, we've invested about $250 million in infrastructure the past decade between a new water plant, a new sewer plant, and library and fire stations. So this will be considerably smaller than that, but it's just one project. Last fall, our city share alone was going to be around $24 million. So when you look at the collaboration between the city and the county, there'll be some savings because of some shared space. There'll be long-term savings because of shared staff. And yet, without a doubt, the project itself and the bond issue will be considerably larger because we actually only make up about roughly a third of the space that's needed by the time you put sheriff's deputies, district courts, and other victim service programs together.
And you mentioned water and sewer as being a couple of the projects you did in the past.
Yeah.
It seems like cities and towns a lot of them are on that same schedule.
Yeah.
We're hearing a lot of folks are having to update those systems as well.
Yeah, we were fortunate here in Bozeman. I mean, the growth that we experienced over the past 20 years and then the anticipated growth moving forward had us building brand new facilities on both fronts. That'll roughly handle a population about 50% growth from where we are today. So, yeah, between the two of those alone, it was about $100 million between the water plant and the sewer plant.
Right. Another issue I know that Bozeman is looking at, and communities across the state have to deal with the issue of transportation.
Yeah.
And finding ways to fund that. Bozeman has come up with an idea here on some local transportation funding. Tell folks about what that is.
Yeah, just this summer we created a arterial collector street district, which essentially is an assessment on all properties in town to build out the larger roads in the system. So not your residential street, but for the most part all of us who get on the street network, and whether we're taking our kids to school or whether we're shopping or whether we're heading in and out of town, we're on a Durston, a Babcock, Valley Center, these various roads. and we really didn't have a good funding mechanism to pay for them. So impact fees are a part of the equation. We've had impact fees for the better part of a couple decades, but they were not fully covering the need. We got about $80 million we identified in transportation upgrades that need to take place. So good news is we were able to create a funding mechanism to help solve the problem. What we'd ultimately like to do, though, honestly, is replace that with a consumptive tax or a gas tax, so that our residents in Bozeman aren't the only ones paying the bill. I mean, ultimately, you know, we've grown to about 40, maybe 44, 45,000 residents, but over 4 million people are driving in and through Bozeman, whether they're tourists for Yellowstone or fly fishing or skiing. And there's about 15 to 20,000 people a day that commute into Bozeman for work, education, et cetera, and about 3,000 or 4,000 of us that go out of the city to do our work. So transportation is a much more transient and used system than just those people who live in the city. Right. Whereas water and sewer is really easy to connect who's the user and who the payer is. On the transportation side, it's quite a bit more challenging.
And so you hope that you may be able to make a transition from a system now where it's basically property owners that are paying it to one where it's more evenly spread among the people that are actually using it.
Absolutely. We'd like a more equitable system so the user becomes the payer instead of just those property owners and business owners in the community. So,
one last real quick question for you, Chris. At this meeting, a lot of ideas are shared and folks have an opportunity to sit down. What kind of issues or what issue have you heard in the last day or two that you've been here that really seems to be a top priority for communities?
You know, this morning we had a great speaker talking about healthcare costs, and I've been a part of trying to help create the pool for Montana cities and towns, and not just accept industry standards on the increase of costs there. He gave some really excellent ideas of just continuing to drive our employees and all of us who use healthcare, which we all do sooner or later, to being consumers and customers, paying attention to what the bill is, paying attention to how expensive it is. And I think the message we've got to get across, even as we are self-insured, is that the best way to manage care is to be healthy. And the best way to manage costs really is when you do need help, whether it's a knee replacement or surgery or something much more minor. The least expensive care is the one that truly takes care of the illness. So really the quality of the care is first and foremost, and if the quality is exceptional, then ultimately you'll save cost.
Right. Well, Chris, I appreciate you taking some time to visit with us today. We are talking with Chris Kukulski, who's the manager for the city of Bozeman. Chris, thank you very much.
Thanks for having me. Appreciate the opportunity.
Absolutely.
Charter Local Edition has been an exclusive presentation of Charter Communications.